up, you critters. Pick 'em up. Horses pulling tanks and trucks.
Johnny, you have a cigarette for me?
One of those Canadians is all.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Me too, Johnny.
Sure.
What this town we come to, Sargento?
I don't know for sure, Domingo. Newark, New Jersey, if I remember my geography.
Newark, New Jersey.
I never hear of such a place.
Well, it's just south of where New York used to be. Pretty big town. Or used to be.
The CBS Radio Workshop, dedicated to man's imagination, the theater of the mind. Today, The Long Way Home, a glimpse of a future we trust will never happen. A story of the fate of men to whom it is given to do what they have to do, with or without understanding, but with patience, goodwill, and a sense of comradeship.
Ruski, you know that was a German song when I was fighting in North Africa 30 years ago.
Every army take it over. Like every army take up song in every war. Let me play you other one from First World War. I think we learned this from Avstrici, but many soldiers still sing it in Spanish war. I know. My father was airplane mechanic there.
Say, I hear that. My old man, he served in the United States Army in 1917. He was Cubano like me, of course. But he want to fight Alemans.
Germanskis, everybody want to fight them. Let me play you a song from Second Big War. This one is Russian. I think you all know.
Oh, sure. I heard that one when I was a real little kid.
Yeah, Shiv, old boy, you come and look after this stew and let me borrow that lip organ for a minute. I'll give you a really spirited old army tune.
Right, sir.
This one practically took the world, as our armies haven't been doing for some time now, I'm afraid.
We know that. Oh, everybody do.
Yeah, I also. From my papushka. He fight in First War also.
Tit, hop! There goes that stew. First stop meal I might have had in 3 days.
Ничего. His army, товарищ. Always the same.
The mayor of Newark to see the general. Sergeant of squad next to headquarters. Cut.
Guess he means you, Johnny.
Sergeant Johnson, 1st Squad, 1st Platoon, 2070 Infantry reporting, sir.
Report to General Clarkson that Mayor Collins is calling with technical experts.
Yes, sir.
All others, as you are.
Good. I play music for Mayor to go to terrible fate.
What fate?
We talk with Big General. What color eyes Mayor have?
How I know?
Never mind. Maybe dark.
Look here, Mr. Mayor. We know you have your problems, but we have worse ones. We have reliable information that an enemy force will attempt a landing somewhere around Cape May within 2 or 3 days. We've got to stop that.
Whose force, may I ask, General Clarkson?
How am I supposed to know by all the knobby knees in New Jersey? Our intelligence says it's probably General Wolfe with his Germans.
Germans, General?
Or whatever he's got now. But even if they're outer Tibetans, I can tell you we're in for a rough time. And so will you and your people be, Mr. Mayor, if we can't stop them from landing.
I'm sorry, General, but I still don't see how we are involved. We are a community of civilians.
Well, let me tell you, Mr. Civilian, you have the good fortune to be the head of one of the few cities in the world that has at least some serviceable walls left. Now, I know Wolfe. I've fought him before. And if Wolfe makes a landing here in New Jersey, you not only will have none of your walls left, but no people either. Mr. Mayor, we know that you've got gasoline stored underground somewhere around here, and we need gas.
You'll make it sound grim, General.
It will be grim, believe me.
Perhaps so, but what do you want me to do about it?
Lord knows we've got few enough tanks left, but even those we have are useless without gas. And if we can't get gas for our trucks to bring up the supplies that we have left, or those we can squeeze out of communities like yours, Mr. Mayor, Why, man, we'd be just plain helpless.
Let me ask you one question, General.
Sure, fire away.
Whom are you fighting and why?
Whom? Why, anybody who's fighting us, of course. Anybody. Why? Well, I suppose I have to admit I don't really know too much about that part of it myself, but... Because I'm a soldier, I suppose. Because my government ordered me to.
But we have hardly any government left, General. When were you last in touch with anything one could call the government of the United States of America?
Well...
Exactly, General. But I tell you what I'll do. I'll turn one of our gas reservoirs over to you and let you do with it whatever you want. And I'll throw in a bonus on one condition.
That's too much, sir. Who are you to make conditions to the commanding officer of an army of your own government?
About the government, I wouldn't know, General. I haven't heard anything from them for a pretty long time. Concerning your army, I'm not so sure whether it should be considered an army of the United States or just General Clarkson's army.
No.
There have been I don't know how many dozens of armies like yours wandering around the world these last few years, clawing at each other and pushing each other back and forth across the earth.
Yeah. All right. What's your condition?
That you get your troops out tomorrow morning.
Well, that one I can accept. We have an appointment around Cape May anyway, if we can get your gasoline, that is.
Well, don't let the difference in our points of view mislead you, General. We naturally wish you the best of luck.
Thanks. You mentioned a bonus.
Yes, it's something your intelligence apparently missed. Just before this whole mess started, the government enlarged a few of the natural caves in the foothills west of here and stored some aeroplanes there. There are about 5 or 6 left.
Airplanes?
I don't know how modern you'd consider them.
Modern? Modern? Man, what does that matter when there hasn't been a factory on the face of the earth producing anything at all for years? I don't even know if I'd still recognize an airplane anymore.
Well, they're yours, together with the gas, if your army leaves in the morning.
Mr. Mayor, you got a deal. Now we'll at least have a chance against that wolf.
Hold it a minute, soldier. There's a couple of folks here.
Civilians.
Oh, they're wearing decent clothes, too.
What can I do for you, sir? And ma'am?
Mr. and Mrs. William Harrison Taylor, young man.
Sir?
I ain't no sir, ma'am. Just a sergeant.
Well, Sergeant,
These
then.
sergeants run army, lady. Never mind, sir.
Except General, maybe.
All right, shut up, you two. Yes, ma'am?
Well, you'll have to forgive an old lady's curiosity, but it's been so long since we've heard anything about what is going on. We would have liked to have brought something for you and your men.
Oh, there wouldn't have been any call for that, ma'am. The Army still takes pretty good care of us. He means we take good care. Don't mind them, ma'am. They're just road happy. Men get a little silly after marching a long time.
You mean marching too long, Sergeant?
I wouldn't know, sir. We go where we have to go.
Yeah, but it's pretty far sometime, Johnny.
You talk. You come only from Cuba. Me, I come all the way from Korea.
So it's Sen. There's 8,000 miles of water between Melbourne and even the west coast of this blooming continent.
Madam, permit a man to speak among children. Me, I come from Omsk. From Omsk? That is in Siberia. It is half around the world.
Say, Sergeant, what kind of an army is this anyway? I thought it was American.
Oh, it is that, sir. General Clarkson's army.
But all those foreigners...
Well, sir, in a war like this, you can't take too much account of nationalities. Now, Ivan, the Ruski here, we picked him up in Alaska after that big fight we had up there. His own outfit was just about wiped out. Well, he didn't have no place to go, so he joined up with us. And Sen here, he says he's a Korean. Seems he came over with that army that invaded California under General Yamento a couple of years ago. But he got lost in the hills. He had no way to get home. So he kept wandering around, and we picked him up when we got pushed back through Washington State by those Mohammedans of General Abdel Ali.
Me, I joined up with these chaps in Canada after my own brigade was wiped out. Where else would a man go these days?
Me, I believe in freedom.
And me, I reckon I just like fighting.
I have to repeat my question, young man. Is this supposed to be an American army?
Why, sure it is, sir. Our commanding officer is General Clarkson in that tent over there.
But, Sergeant...
Never mind, William. The government undoubtedly has its reasons.
Government? There is no government that I've heard from, at least. Not even about taxes.
Don't fuss now, William. Sergeant.
Yes, ma'am?
Do you happen to be free from duty tonight?
As far as I know, ma'am. Unless we get orders to move out.
Well, our apartment is below street level, and so we still have a fairly decent space to live in. That last rocket did shake the plaster off the ceiling. But it's warm and quite comfortable, and we have a little store of tea left over.
Tea? As a matter of fact, Mother, I even think there are a few bottles of beer. Home brew, of course.
Beer?
Cerveza?
What? Beer, you dope pivo! Oh, Zaman, shut you! Great day!
Stow it, Ruski. Can't you stop playing that tinkerbox even while you're breaking your legs in this rubble?
Hey, you don't like music when we go to party?
Yeah, but we're not going to Kentucky. You could be carrying a squirt gun over that shoulder.
I got 2 shoulders, Chief. One for gun, one for balalaika.
Kentucky, where it is?
Never mind, Carver. They ain't had a war there in 100 years.
Somebody sure beat up this town, though.
You say that after we go through Chicago, Detroit, Toledo? Oh, look the same.
Yeah, I guess you're right, Sen. Hold it, guys. I think this is the place. Oh. Why, miss, we were looking for Mr. and Mrs. Taylor. We were invited.
You're expected, too. Please come in.
Oh, thank you, miss. You didn't know.
Look at our fellow. Abel has found himself a little minka.
Oh, come on. Shut up with that.
And there I was, Mrs. Taylor, sitting in that bloody tree with that bloody spear pinning me bloody thigh to the bloody trunk. And all in this so-called atomic age.
Is ex-tovarish.
Ex-what, Ruski?
Ex-atomic, tovarish. Is no more factories, no more atomics.
Gracias a Dios. Might even live longer this way.
I wouldn't count on too much, Cove.
Why can't? We don't get paid anyway.
Oh, stash it, Ruski.
That reminds me of a fellow I served with in the Second World War. Well, we just landed on this island. But I guess he got himself lost or something. And the next thing you know, after we take this village, there he is sitting on this throne with 4 bodyguards with spears and at least 8 wives.
More tea, Sergeant?
Oh, thanks, miss. My name is John.
Is Johnny. Johnny John.
Mine is Martha. Martha Waycross.
Waycross?
I'm only taken over. Mother and Dad, Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, that is, they found me at the intersection of Broad Street and the highway to Red Bank after that first awful bombing. I was only about 7 then.
Your parents gone?
I really don't know. I'd forgotten my name from the shock or something. So when Mother and Dad registered me as their takeover, they put me down as Waycross. What are you looking so strange about?
I don't know. You make me think of something. Make me smell it even.
Smell what?
I don't know. That's what I don't know. That's what I'm trying to remember.
Where do you come from, Sergeant?
Come from? Oh, South Dakota originally. Black Hills country.
And have you been home recently?
No, ma'am. Not since I joined up 7 years ago.
You haven't been back since?
Well, no. I figured this time when we got chased off the West Coast, I'd get a chance to stop by the farm, see what's left of my family, but then the railway wasn't running, so they sent us across through Canada.
I don't know whether you're aware of it, children, but there's a beautiful full moon outside.
Children? Oh, I also am a child.
Would you like to go out and look at the moon, Martha?
Yes, Johnny.
How about another bottle of beer, gentlemen?
You are a gentleman, Mr. Taylor.
Beer ball.
Johnny, what are you thinking about?
I just figured out what you reminded me of before.
Something nice, I hope.
Oh, yeah. Real nice. I don't know if I can say it right, but it had something to do with when I was a kid back home on the farm. It'd be the sun and the bright blue sky in the summer, the smell of the green grass and the wheat and the corn. My mother would be in the kitchen usually, cooking up something good. And always in the summer there'd be that warm breeze in my face and hair.
What's that?
Huh? That noise? Gosh, I hope it's the reinforcements we've been waiting for. General Bob Smith's outfit. I reckon we sure enough are moving out now.
But
The planes themselves are okay, sir. Our mechanics can't find a thing wrong with them.
So what is wrong?
I don't know, sir. They just don't handle right.
Will they fly at all?
After a fashion, sir.
Well, maybe that's enough of a margin. If Smith has some ammunition, that is. We'll need everything we can lay our hands on to stop that wolf.
Johnny, are you as lonesome for home as you sound?
Lonesome for home? Home, that's the Army, Martha. And lonesome, how could I be lonesome? I've been in this outfit since I was 14. Now, you're giving me an idea, though.
Hope this one is nice, too.
Heard it from a fella I went to school with. He went back home last year. He told me there are some folks that have moved into some of those caves in the hills, right near where I was raised. And they're collecting all kinds of things.
Sounds wonderful.
Seems there was a saint once in Italy or somewhere. Saint Benedict, I think. And he collected all the stuff he could find when they had a lot of wars over there, just to save the old inventions and ideas. Civilization, I guess. Well, those people back home are trying to do the same thing.
Johnny, are you thinking of going back to join them?
Oh, now, Martha, if a man had himself a good woman, I don't owe the Army any time anymore.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you delivered the planes, all right. And you turned over that gasoline to us, but the two just don't work together.
Huh?
The planes won't run on that gas the way they should, neither will our tanks and trucks.
I'm sorry, General, but that's not our fault. The stuff hasn't been touched since it was pumped into the reservoir 15 years ago.
15 years? Oh, that's no wonder.
What's the matter, General?
Do you know what evaporation and condensation in an underground tank can do to gasoline in 15 years? I only hope the stuff is good for one mission at least.
You did pass through New York on your way here.
Rather.
Say, what's it look like? We haven't heard from anyone who's been through there for years.
New York? Oh, kaput!
It's true, sir. There ain't anything left. We had to dig a road through the rubble for our tanks.
Tell me something, Mr.
Corporal Lee, ma'am. Originally of the 5th Australian Division.
Well, Corporal, you're not an American. Why are you here? Why do you fight?
Why, madam, the women have children.
Oh, but that's a woman's role in life.
Well, madam, maybe it's a man's role to fight.
Ha ha! Woman have it, baby. Men, they fight. Is man's life in army.
Well, all I can say, Bob, is I'm glad you got here. I have a hunch this wolf is going to be pretty tough to lick. He wouldn't risk a landing if he didn't think he was pretty well fixed.
Where do you think he'll hit us?
G2 says around Cape May. It makes sense, too. Well, you got here just in time, Bob. The mayor of this junk heap made me swear we'd move out in the morning.
What do you mean, Major?
Oh, heck, he had some gas stored underground from before the war. A few planes hidden in those caves, and so we made a deal. Now, it turns out, of course, that the gas is full of water and the planes practically refuse to fly on it. Still, you know the old saw, beggars can't be choosers.
I'd have shot the so-and-so.
I thought of it. But how would I have found those supplies of his? What do you got left?
Not much. 5 tanks, M84s and 86s, about 20 6x6 trucks, a few rocket launchers, enough mortars and artillery for a couple of battalions. I've got about 15,000 men.
Just about a division.
Yeah, the way we used to think of it. Now it's an army.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you caught up with us anyway, Bob. I don't know whether even the two of us together will be able to stop that wolf. Still, I suppose we better get ready to push out. Sentry! Have them sound assembly. We're moving out in 2 hours.
Hey, what's that? Hey, you guys, back to camp. Assembly sounded. Well, Martha, I guess we're moving.
What about those black hills of yours?
Are we moving, Sarge?
Johnny, we go. You think this is invasion?
Invasion who?
I don't know, you guys, but the bugle gave it on the double. I'm sorry, honey. I guess you see I just can't go home yet.
But you said...
Yeah, I know I did, but I couldn't leave my outfit now, not when the guys are heading for another battle. Might be a real bad one.
Oh, Johnny.
Don't you go worrying now. Martha, I'll feel a lot better just knowing you're alive. You know that, I reckon. But it just don't seem like there's much time left anymore to do the things people really want to do.
Come on, Sarge.
Adelante!
Here, you!
Contact! Fast down!
All right, fall in line there. Both sides of the road. Shut up, you!
Guess you'll run for a while.
Come on now, you guys. Dress it up. Holiday's over.
At least we got some planes on the side again.
Yes, if enough gasoline.
Gasoline? Oh, who needed gasoline? Got feet?
You like carry things?
Rather fight without tanks, Ruski.
Shut up, you guys. Here's the general.
Looks like two of them, rather.
And of the Clarkson Army, once again, as so be often before, our opportunity has come. As you know, I never keep secrets from you. I tell you frankly, therefore, that this time we're up against the toughest and the smartest opponent many of you have ever faced. General Wolfe and his specialists. Our intelligence tells us that they're planning to land near Cape May tomorrow or the next day. But we have been reinforced by General Bob Smith and his army. So, with faith and confidence, and with the courage and skill which you have shown so often, I know that we will continue to keep this continent safe for our women.
Brother, this one's going to be rough, all right. Just
When he talk like that, yes.
Watch hot, right, hey, right step, forward, hard.
Hi, Sarge.
Yeah?
Johnny,
Oh, goodbye, Martha.
the Black Hills. St. Benedict.
Maybe I'll be back. Maybe, Martha.
You've been listening to the CBS Radio Workshop and The Long Way Home, a glimpse of the future we hope will never confront us. Written by Henry E. Fritsch, music arranged by Alexander Steinert, produced and directed in New York by Paul Roberts. William Redfield was heard as Johnny, Danny Acco as Ivan, and Terry Keane as Martha. Others in the cast included Bob Dryden, Joseph Julian, Roger DeKoven, Nat Polan, Leon Janney, Guy Rep, Wendell Holmes, Jack Arthur, and Ruth Tobin. This is Ted Pearson inviting you to listen again next week when from Hollywood the CBS Radio Workshop presents Heaven in the Sky, an actuality broadcast of the tragedy of the Pacoima school disaster in which a disabled DC-7 fell into a crowded schoolyard. This is the CBS Radio Network.
From Hollywood, the CBS Radio Workshop.
He loved airplanes. He lived and breathed airplanes. His heaven was in the sky. It was just airplanes. He was building a model the morning he died.
CBS Radio presents the CBS Radio Workshop, dedicated to man's imagination, the theater of the mind.
The Empyrean is no longer empty. Where Apollo once drove his fiery chariot across the firmament, the afterburners of supersonic jets blast the stratosphere. As the airplane has shrunk the earth, so has the air in which it flies been shrunk. A 500-mile-an-hour plane needs space in which to fly, more space than exists above our crowded land. And with tragic frequency, modern Icarus is learning that what goes up sometimes comes down in flames. Not quite 4 months ago, death fell without warning on a little California community, fell into a crowded schoolyard from a peaceful sky. You are about to hear what happened that day in the words of those to whom it happened, those who live beneath our shrinking air.
The CBS Radio Workshop presents a human document, Heaven is in the Sky, produced and directed by William N. Robeson.
At 10:15 a.m., January 31st, flight engineer Waldo Adams grasped the 4 throttle knobs in his right hand and slowly pushed them forward. Pilot William Carr, responding to the mighty pull of the engines, eased the wheels slowly back, keeping his feet steady on the rudder pedals, and the latest DC-7B took off from Santa Monica Airport on its first functional flight after manufacturing. At 10:30 a.m., radio operator Roy Nakazawa reported to Santa Monica Tower that the DC-7B was over Catalina Island at 9,000 feet and climbing. 10 minutes later and 50 miles north, the classes changed at the Pacoima Junior High School. And the boys of the 7th grade streamed into the schoolyard for 45 minutes of fun and games. At 10:50, the Joshua trees of the Mojave Desert quivered as test pilot Roland E. Owen roared down runway 25 on the Palmdale Airport, the tailpipe of his F-89J Scorpion streaking plane. A routine flight, a radar check flight. His target plane, another jet, was already aloft and nearly out of sight in the clear blue sky. It takes a piston job, even a new 4-motored piston job, a little longer to make altitude. At 11:06, the DC-7B checked into Santa Monica Tower at 25,000 feet over Ontario, California. Some 50 miles northeast, the Scorpion was already at 25,000, making a radar fix on its target plane 8,000 feet higher. Somewhere between them, somewhere 5 miles beneath them, the boys of the 7th grade Pacoima Junior High were discharging their energy, teenage energy. And the mother of one of them, the mother of Ronnie Brand, felt
Here he couldn't have been in a safer place with an 8-foot fence around him. Even if there was a wreck on the street, his car couldn't come through that fence unless it was doing 90 miles an hour. The only thing that could have got him was something out of the sky.
Draw a line northwest from Ontario. Draw another southwest from Palmdale. They will intersect above the San Fernando Valley, one of the fastest-growing areas in the world. Put a 300-mile-an-hour DC-7B on the northwest line and a 500-mile-an-hour Scorpion jet on the southwest line at exactly the same altitude, time it just right, and they will collide over the San Fernando Valley. At 11:18 a.m., January 31st, they did. The San Fernando Valley is 20 miles long and more than 10 miles wide and dotted with pleasant little houses. But there are still places where a wrecked airplane might fall harmlessly to earth. Walnut groves, alfalfa fields, dry riverbeds, the rugged mountains to the north. Toward these, the Scorpion hurtled, now a ball of fire. But the dying DC-7B, its left wing sheared away, continued, faltering, falling toward the densely populated valley. Pilot Carr vainly fighting the useless controls, while co-pilot Archie Groucho reported to Santa Monica Tower.
We're a mid-air collision. We're going in. Uncontrollable. We've had it, boy. 4 jets, too. I told you we should take shoots. Say goodbye to everybody.
It takes longer than you might think to fall 5 miles. 6 minutes later, the play period of the 7th grade of Pacoima Junior High School was coming to an end, and the boys were beginning to straggle into the gym. In the auditorium, Linda Luttrell, valedictorian of the 9th grade, was rehearsing her graduation speech.
We have only one life to live. And when it's over, will the world be a better place?
We have only one life to live, and when it's over, will the world be a better place for our having lived in it? Intent on her words, Linda didn't hear the sound of falling death, but the boys of the 7th grade did.
We was out on the gym field playing, and then we heard this high whistle. And everybody looked up.
I saw the whole plane just coming down. It was going around and around. It was on fire. And pieces were flying from it. And groups of metal were coming down together.
We all started running. I says, well, I'm with you. And we started running. And I seen Ronnie with me, and then I passed him, and then he passed me. I ran to try to get off a pole.
I ran to get away. I ran from it.
I just jumped to the ground and covered up my head.
Donald Kellner, driver of the school bus parked by the playing field, heard it too.
While I was in my bus, I was making out a routine report, and I heard this screaming noise, just like a plane out of control. And I stepped out of my bus and looked up, and here was this DC-7.
Then it exploded.
When that thing exploded, it was just right over their heads. And, of course, when they were running away from it, and these parts were rolling with them, and just knocking them down as they were running away from the thing. They were trying so hard to get away from it, They were just running.
I was running, and if I hadn't stopped real fast, I'd have probably got it, because there's a great big piece about 5 feet long come sliding across in front of me. And a few other times, some pieces might have hit me. My main thought was to get out of the way of all the pieces that was sliding and flying.
Well, I didn't notice anything until the plane got right on top of me, and then it blew up, and then a bunch of stuff started flying over. I turned to take a step, and then something blew me down. It blew me about 6 times over. I was 60 feet away from the plane when it hit the ground, and all the gas tanks on the behind the motors blew up and gave out tremendous heat, and it felt like a pressure tank and felt like a furnace. I was just thinking just to keep down and don't move till I think it was all right to get up. The only time I looked around is when my boyfriend, Rita Colasso, that came up to me and asked that he asked me how did I look. And I just took one look at him. I didn't look at him too much because he was all burnt from his waist up. He was crying, and he says I'm ruined.
I just jumped to the ground and covered up my head. So I figured if something hit and wouldn't get my eyes cut open or something like that. About the time I hit the ground, the plane hit. Part of the piece hit me in the foot. I got real mad, and I thought it did. I didn't feel the cut at first, so I started walking in, and then I looked down and I saw the cut, and it started hurting me. Turned around, some of the kids were crying and yelling and screaming. And I saw kids laying all over the ground, white T-shirts. I couldn't see it until I got out of the deal because there's so much smoke, and my shoulder was hurting me most. Then when I got out, I seen these kids all laying out, and I seen one guy, Malcolm. He's a Mexican kid. I know him very good. And I drug him away from an engine light and flaming, man, and something dripping out of it. And when it dripped, it started to fly, flames bigger and bigger. I was dragging him away, and I couldn't drag him anymore because my shoulder knocked me out, and a piece of metal knocked me out on it and wrecked me.
I ran towards the crash because, after all, it's my job. I'm responsible for the boys.
John Vardanian speaking, physical education instructor at Pacoima Junior High School, the first grown-up to reach the hurt and frightened boys.
I didn't think. I just acted. I ran immediately to the center of the impact, the crash impact, in order to pull out any boys that might have been burning or clothes might have caught on fire, in which in some cases that happened. They called, "Coach, I'm hurt." And I had to put down several boys and told them to stay where they were. I judged how seriously they were hurt. And then I went over to the more serious. I couldn't do everything. There were just too many of them. And there was no place that was really safe, no matter where they had been.
The mothers who lived near the school knew that death was close.
I was ironing Skippy's shirts when I heard this awful whining sound. Then I just threw my iron up, and when all the steam went against the wall. And I saw the black smoke just curling up. And I said, "Oh, my God, Shirley." I said, that's the schoolhouse. And she said, yes. So we started running.
Others further away did not realize at first that their children were in danger.
First thing I knew it was the school was when I got a phone call from some friends of mine in Montebello. And then they said over radio that it was the 7th and 8th grade boys that was out. And I just waited. There wasn't much I could do. I didn't go to school because I knew that if there was anything wrong that they would call me. I called some neighbors over and we just waited. Every time the phone would ring, why, I was pretty afraid to pick the phone up, thinking that maybe it was from the hospital. And I had my neighbors over and we talked and just kind of walked around between ourselves and tried to keep busy is about all we could do. I had a feeling that he was involved and there wasn't anything I could do. And then they said over radio that not to jam up the traffic. I thought that you get down there and in all the confusion, if you couldn't find your boy, then what would you do? I mean, I just wouldn't know what to do then. I'd probably go back home and just wait. And then when he didn't come home, well, I was positive of it. Either he was killed or seriously hurt. But I knew that there was no use going because they said they would call as soon as they could. I finally got my call about 2:30 in the afternoon. They called me and told me that he was in the hospital.
But most of the mothers of Pacoima were not as philosophical as Mrs. Rotello.
Well, there were hundreds of people on the field, and the parents, some of the mothers were screaming, and they were just in hysterics. They were hysterical, you know, and just running from one person to another, asking, "Did you see my boy?" or this, and "Where is he?" or "Where is he?" That's all they'd say, you know, and just someone just stand and scream.
The first little boy that was laying there that was closest to me had a jacket on just like Skippy's. And, of course, I ran to him. And we just looked into the face, and it wasn't mine, so I looked into their little faces, long enough to glance to make sure it wasn't mine. I even heard one mother say to a child, "I can't help you, honey. I haven't found my own." I know my son, he yelled for somebody to help him, and they run right by him. Well, see, that's the normal reaction of parents, because we were looking for our own first.
I started going around from boy to boy, the ones that were fallen and hurt. Looking for my boy, I didn't. I looked at everyone, and I was helping my neighbor find her boy.
The parents, those that thought or knew their boys were out there, were a little panicky. I don't blame them.
Certainly no parent would, but things look differently to a 12-year-old, more realistic perhaps.
The parents, they were down there buzzing around and everything, causing a lot of confusion and scaring some of the kids that were B7s. They were scaring them pretty bad. A lot of them went to the hospital just from shock. They come in there screaming and everything. Say, scream out loud, "Where's my boy? Where's my boy?" and all like that. If they'd have calmed down, they'd have probably found out where their boy was a lot sooner.
Mrs. Lorraine Lafreniere, who had been ironing just a moment before, finally found her boy.
He was laying on his stomach. Of course, they had something over his head. His head was bleeding terrible. He says, "Don't cry, Mama." And I said, "Oh, I'm not going to cry now. I found you." And he says, "Let me see your face." And I bent down on that. And he says, "Mama, would you say the Hail Mary and the Act of Contrition with me?"
And Mrs. Margaret Barrios found hers.
And I saw my son walking toward me. He was hurt. He was bleeding. All his face was bloody. I saw that he was burned. I didn't know the extent of his injuries, but he looked pretty bad to me.
But Mrs. Virginia Brand could not find her son, Ronnie, not at the schoolyard, for an ambulance had already taken him to the hospital.
The nurse said, "We'll just have to look at every boy because we don't know who's who." And so myself and the nurse all ran around looking at each boy, and some of them were burnt so bad I had to get right down at their face and look to see that it wasn't mine. And we ran and looked at all the boys, and then I came back to the desk and spelled out my name in case they had a wrong name there. And because he was on the list of the injured. And then the doctor must have heard me or something. The doctor said, "Come here, I want to talk to you." And I said, "Well, what do you want to talk to me for?" I guess I was stalling time. I knew what he was going to say. I just had that feeling.
The minute I drove in the hospital, I realized that the whole thing...
These are the words of Ronnie Brand's father.
A number of cars parked, and I don't know, I just was kind of numb, I guess, and her friend came out to meet me, and I just asked her where my wife was, and I could tell by the look on her face as to what I was going to expect to hear.
Ronnie Brand, age 13, whose heaven was in the sky, was dead. A tiny sliver of metal from the sky had pierced his temple. A tiny fragment of duralumin. A tiny piece of an airplane.
He loved airplanes. He just lived and breathed airplanes. I never saw him without an airplane in his hand. His heaven was in the sky. It was just airplanes. He was building a model the morning he died. I was getting ready for work and keeping after him, and he was just sitting there building this model. He had asked for a DC-7 model for his birthday, which I got because I generally buy what he wanted, within reason. And that just happened to be that type of plane that killed him. All this money he's been making, this $2 a week, he went for model airplanes, and he just mentioned that he had $47 worth of models. And he has them sitting all over his room. I haven't been able to go out to his room. I bought this house because of that room outside, like he wanted, off the garage, so he could have privacy with his boyfriends, and they thoroughly enjoyed that room. It is very hard to come home at night because Ronnie was always there. He'd come in about 6 o'clock or so, and then he'd watch the television. I'd get home shortly after 6, and there'd always be a light. It's the hardest thing. I try and sleep in till after 8 o'clock because he usually left for school till 10 minutes of 8. He always washed the dishes for me. I give him $2 a week for, picking up the house and doing the dishes. And so he left his cereal dish on the table. I said, Ronnie, it's going to be easier to wash if you put it down the sink when you get home. Put some water in it. So he did. And so that's when he noticed the time, and out he flew out the door. That was the last I saw him. And when I came home that night, my girlfriend was with me, and I saw that dish of cereal with the cereal still in the bowl, and I told her, I says, will you please wash up that? I can't stand to look at that. Because I never did come home and find a dish on the sink. He wasn't too good about emptying the trash, but because it was out of sight, out of mind. And, but there was never a dish on that sink, not even one cup. It didn't used to bother me a bit. My mother-in-law, instead of buying him toys throughout all these years, has put money in the bank, which everybody thought was a wonderful idea. He had a bank account for when he was 16, he was to have his car. He had it dagoed and he had it raised and lowered and everything in his mind, what he was going to do to it, you know. And so this money, I think it amounts to about $150, and is in bonds right now. Last Mother's Day, he bought me a dime store diamond ring. And he said that when he got working, he was going to buy me a real diamond ring like that. And so he said it a number of times. He told my mother, he told my mother-in-law. It was something he was going to do. So I'm going to use that money and buy myself a diamond ring that he was going to buy me.
A week after Ronnie Brand died, he would have been 14. On his birthday, his mother sat talking to his closest buddies, Larry Larimore and Carl Fox.
Larry, how did you feel when you heard Ronnie was gone?
Well, I felt pretty bad because he was a close friend of mine. We always went around together and had a lot of fun. But when I heard he was gone, I felt pretty bad because I lost one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be the same without him.
You're pretty close then at school. I'm sorry I didn't know you before this, you know. And
I'm sorry I didn't know you before this, but we had a lot of fun together.
Yeah, you seem the same type of boy that Ronnie was. Just a regular boy. Mm-hmm. You're not a sissy, you're not a toughie, you're just a boy. Mm-hmm. And how do you feel, Carl, since he's gone out of the neighborhood?
Well, I didn't even eat dinner that night or nothing. And I didn't hardly sleep any that night neither. I was thinking about that. And after it's all over, but every day I get out of the deal, we meet, or Ronnie and me usually meet at this one place at brunch, and it's at these tables. Uh-huh. And now I always go back to them tables and I look over there I don't see Ronnie, but then I go someplace else.
I know just what you mean.
I always get out of the same, probably by the same period, and I always go over by the tables and look over, and then I remember he's gone, and I walk over and find some other guy.
I never see you kids out playing anymore in the neighborhood like I used to always see you out there flying the airplanes. Last Sunday was the first time I'd seen you. This has all happened. I never saw one that I didn't see. The four of you are usually always together.
I know we can't find each other anymore.
You should really miss Ronnie then in the neighborhood and at school, everything. I never did lose a chum like that throughout my life. I never knew anybody that got killed like that one. Even casually, I didn't know him, but I imagine it's pretty hard.
When I went to school, Ralph and everybody, they hardly ever meet because they don't know where to go. Ronnie used to always say, well, let's meet here and let's meet there, but now nobody to say that, so we don't know where to meet.
I sure appreciate all you boys being pallbearers, because I know that's what Ronnie would have done, and that's why I didn't want you to dress up, because I figured it was the birthday party that Ronnie should have had tonight. That's why your father wanted to get you all suits, and I said, no, just whatever you clean up in. Because Ronnie would know you kids all in suits, and so I figured it was just kind of the kids that would have been there at the party.
His heaven was in the sky. May he and his two dead schoolmates, Bobby Zellen and Evan Elsner, and the four crewmen of the DC-7B, and the pilot of the F-89J, find their heaven less crowded than the skies above our peaceful land, where death lurks in the ever-shrinking, overcrowded air.
The CBS Radio Workshop has presented Heaven is in the Sky with Frank Goss as narrator. Recording and research by Jules Maitland. Next week from New York, the Workshop presents I Have Three Heads, a study of the techniques, possibilities, and improbabilities of tape recording. A visit backstage in broadcasting, where things happen that are stranger, more exciting, and more fun than anything Alice ever discovered behind the looking glass. Next week at the same time, I Have Three Heads. Now stay tuned for Suspense, which follows immediately over most of these same stations.
Passing tape over three heads, one for erasing, one for recording, the third for playback.
And the CBS Radio Workshop, dedicated to man's imagination, the theater of the mind, presents I Have Three Heads, a study of the techniques, the possibilities, and the improbabilities of tape recording. Today's workshop was conceived and created by CBS radio engineer Mort Goldberg. In today's workshop,
Mr. Goldberg has been aided and abetted by... hey, hold on.
Slow down, wait a minute. Too fast.
That was Stu Metz. Nice guy, but loves to talk, like all announcers. Aided and abetted by... Aided and abetted by a writer, a director, who needs 'em? All you need for a good bang-up tape job is a good engineer like Morty and a trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly tape machine like me. That's all you need. Morty and I, we put our heads together. His one head and my three, and we can do anything. Yes, sir, anything. Uh-oh. Who's this coming in? Don't they know this tape room's closed until tomorrow morning?
Okay, Bill. Tape room 18's clear. Ready to take her inside there? Right.
Maintenance men. Prod you, poke you, take your insides out. Regular little Dr. Kildare's.
Man, these new machines get heavier all the time. You said it. Lift a couple of these every day, and you could bend steel bars in a circus. Right.
New machine. What gives? Am I on the way out?
Okay. Let's put it down for a minute and rest. I'm tired, boy. Get a cable. We'll have to stretch it to the new box. Over in the corner. Got it. Well, what are you waiting for? What about tools? You got them? All except the wrench that fell out of my pocket. In the elevator. I'll go get it. Easy. Let's take the old machine out or we won't have room to work. These tape rooms aren't any bigger than a cell.
Right. Which one of these old machines goes?
Don't you know?
I don't know. Won't you?
Joe didn't tell you himself?
I thought Joe told you.
Okay, skip it. He's out. We'll have to wait till he comes back from supper.
Well, that's maintenance men for you. They can tell you transistor 205 connects to pole 83 on the BX sub-transformer, but when it comes to replacing one of the 3 experienced machines in this tape room, they should go back to plumbing. Sure hope it won't be me. Say, maybe this new machine knows who he's replacing. Hi, new here, aren't you?
That's obvious at first glance, I should say.
Well, we were all bright and new once. I'm Howard Ampex, Model 200. And you?
Gerald Ampex, Model 350.
We must be cousins.
Distant, I'm sure.
Wait till this time tomorrow. Wait till you've worked 12, 14 hours steadily. Fast forward, rewind, stop, edit, fast forward, stop, edit, fast forward, dub, loop, rewind. I hope I'll see you after a week.
I doubt whether you will.
What do you mean by that?
I saw how you trembled when I was ushered in a few minutes ago. You're quite sure I'm here to replace you, aren't you?
Oh, am I? I heard those maintenance men talking. I remember every syllable of every word, like a good tape machine should.
I'm quite aware of what they said.
Are you? Let me play them back to you. Remember? The tape room door opened, and then Frank and Bill started talking.
Okay, Bill. Tape room 18's clear.
Right.
There's no machine inside there?
Right.
Well, what are you waiting for? Let's steal her.
What about Joe?
Joe comes back from supper. Get a wrench and stretch him out in a box.
Right.
Okay, let's skip. The elevator man's in my pocket. Let's lift, take her out, and sell her.
Well, now, Gerald, which of us machines is going out tonight?
Howard Ampex, that's the most dishonest thing I ever heard.
What's dishonest? I didn't change a word.
You changed the order of the words. You changed the whole implication of their conversation.
Cousin, you sure have a lot to learn about tape editing.
You mean that's what we do here? You...
Certainly not. We don't change meanings, that is. You're right. It is dishonest. That's why tape recordings are thrown out in the courts of most states. That's why editing for broadcast takes an entirely different turn.
There was a...
What's that?
A voice on the tape room floor. Just part of a day's work. An hour's work, more or less.
It took a whole hour to get that?
Let me explain. This morning, Morty came in with a fella named George Vikas. Produces a show called Update. Vikas and Morty had a German student on a piece of tape.
I got to know a few students. My own impression from America students was that there was a...
Now, Gerald, is that clear?
That there is more.
Well, it's rather hard to get the drift.
Of course it was. With radio, people are listening on small sets. People are listening in cars. Things have got to be very clear. You play something like that, all over the country, people think something's wrong with their radio.
So how did you save the country?
What? Oh, Morty and I go to work. Morty wants to start at the beginning of the student's words, so he punches me into rewind. Here we are, back at the beginning. Morty punches my start button, and the tape starts unreeling from the feed reel to the take-up reel. It passes by my 3 heads, one for erasing, the second for recording the sounds and words that are fed into it, and the third for playing back what's already on the tape. It's this third, the playback head, we're using now as we catch the student's first words.
I got to know a few students.
Morty punches my stop button. Back we go to find that
What's that very odd noise?
Manual operation. Morty's working the machine by hand.
Well, really, by hand?
You'll have many a hand laid on you before you go back to maintenance for your first checkup. And many a razor blade, too.
Razor blade?
We're coming to that. Morty's found the Now he opens the gate, exposing the heads. He marks the spot for the cut. You'll hear him dropping the pencil.
Where's the razor blade?
My boy, never let it be said we tape machines give any external evidence of the anxiety, the pain, the shock of having a sharp razor blade passed across us a dozen times an hour. The next sound you hear will be the snick of the splicing tape, the tape machine's Band-Aids. Then the tape is put back in the gate is closed, and we're off again.
And my own.
What happened to the words you were editing?
This is a pro job, son. Morty goes on to tighten the space between the words my and own. There you have it. Now you'll hear what Morty's edited so far. Taking out the tightening the space between the my and own.
A few students. My own impression.
Another to come out. And an im from that impression. So Morty makes a mark after my own, pulls the tapes by hand this time, and marks the tape ready to cut after the first im.
My own
That was me, rewinding. Now, here we go forward.
My own impression from America students.
Another to come out. Let's see how fast Morty can make this.
America. Impression from America students was that there is more.
Stop!
What's the matter, Gerald? Are you shaking your heads?
Howard, it can go like this all day?
It's a tough grind, but let me show you how it will sound after an hour or so. That's when you're proud of yourself and your engineer.
I got to know a few students. My own impression from America students was that there is more in the people of this country than that kind of materialism which the tourists expose.
Well, that's very interesting. That's... Howard? Are you crying?
Excuse me, Gerald. It's just so clear, so beautiful, the work I do.
Too bad I haven't some soft music for your emotional jag.
Music? Now, that's where you can have some fun. Have you seen My Fair Lady?
My Fair Lady? What's that?
A musical show I wrote.
Oh, you?
Well, I helped, in a way. Morty and I taped some of Julie Andrews' Cockney pronunciations, and Mr. Harrison making with phonetics. And we taped a funny babble-babble of women's voices you hear on the My Fair Lady record, too. They promised me 2 seats, but I never got them.
Yes. Did I mention that I play classical music extremely well?
You did. As a matter of fact, you'll probably be very good at cleaning tapes.
Cleaning tapes?
Bringing foreign tapes up to American broadcast quality. Jim Fassett, he's our music commentator who has a program here on Sunday afternoons, World Music Festivals. He goes to Europe and brings back orchestras and singers in concerts American audiences might never hear. But listen. That's not good broadcast quality, is it?
Sounds like the Oskaloosa Little Symphony.
On us American machines, yes. But remember, Gerald, these tapes are made in Europe. Different machines. Jim and Morty and I work on these European tapes to restore the original quality. Take this piece of tape. You and I switch back and forth. You play the Fassett, Morty, Howard American version. I'll play the original tape. Here I go.
We're a little late, so good night, folks.
What in the world was that?
A piece of Jack Benny tape that Morty and I lost this afternoon. Wondered where it was.
Does this happen often?
Not often enough, to my way of thinking. Boy, could we have fun. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. However, let me give you a case of where Morty and I did mix some tapes deliberately. You like band music?
Military, college, circus, jazz, or street corner?
Military. Not one, but 4 of them. This same fella, Vikas, that I told you about, he and Morty and I put together an audition for a show that hasn't been broadcast yet. A show called Sounds of the World. That music is the band up at West Point playing. We also got tapes of a band at Buckingham Palace. Another band from France, and still another band playing in Red Square in Moscow. We also got tapes of 4 sergeants, 1 from each country, and let them give the command to march. For international cooperation, how do you like this?
Company! Fusil sur l'épaule!
of the world. 4 military bands from West Point, England, France, and Russia. Maybe they ought to trade the UN for a good tape machine, eh, Gerald?
I like that, Howard.
Sort of liked it myself, if I do say it as shouldn't.
Say, Howard, what's that tune?
That tune? Oh, it's a little number I wrote myself.
Oh, before or after you wrote My Fair Lady?
Well, to edit this statement correctly, I, little old Howard Ampex of Tape Room 18, am probably the only tape machine that had a song especially arranged for him. For years, Morty has played tape backwards and forwards and upside down. But he has never had the chance, until just the other day, to find out what happened when an orchestra taped a song backwards, and then I played it forward again. Says Morty to himself, what happens to the instruments? So that's where Hank Silverne entered. And this is how Hank arranged T for 2 straight. Now, I taped that, and here's how it would sound if played backwards. You see? Almost everybody's done that, including the 2 million people who own home tape recorders. But now came the job of orchestrating T for 2 backwards, so that the musicians began with the last note and played it through to the first note. Here's how that sounded. We had 7 top musicians. Hank at the piano, then guitar, bass, drums, vibes, sax, and trumpet. 4 musicians who could play T for 2 straight in their sleep. This backward arrangement almost drove them to the point of turning in their union cards. But you should have seen their faces a few minutes later. Here's what we've been working for. A popular song, T for 2, orchestrated and played backwards. Now reversed and played forward so that the tune is recognizable. Did you ever hear music like this?
Holy smoke, Howard. That's out of this world.
Well, let's say just barely in it. First time anybody but Morty and me and Hank and a few others have heard that music.
Gosh, Howard, I feel so low.
Low? About what?
I didn't recognize you as a pioneer.
Don't be corny and call me the tape machine's tape machine. It's all in the day's work. Come on, cheer up, Gerald. Uh-oh, someone's coming.
Well, Bill, all set to get this new machine rolling?
Right.
What number machine are we taking out?
Number 20. Got your wrench?
What wrench?
The one you left in the elevator earlier.
I got it.
Well, hold it a minute.
I forgot mine.
I guess it's goodbye, number 20.
Cheer up, Gerald. Old tape machines never die. They just go back and get new heads.
If they come around with those 2 tickets they promised you for My Fair Lady, shall Morty and I tell them where you are?
Don't bother. Morty made his own special version out of 3 recordings. Charlie Applewhite, Sylvia Sims, and Dinah Shores. Want to hear it? Just for kicks?
Fast forward, stop, start, and just for kicks.
I could have danced all night. I could have danced all night and still have begged for more. I could have spread my wings and done 1,000 things I've never done before. I could have danced, all night long. I did, it's all been grand. I did, but now it's time to sleep.
Today's workshop, I Have 3 Heads, was conceived and created by CBS radio engineer Mortimer Goldberg. Mr. Goldberg has been aided and abetted by the following: Charles S. Monroe, writer; Ira Ashley, director in New York; Jackson Beck as Howard; Ian Martin as Gerald; and Ralph Bell and Bill Quinn as the maintenance men. Hank Silverne, arranger and conductor. Stuart Metz, your announcer. The workshop wishes to thank James Fassett, Irving Gitlin, George Bekas, and others who contributed portions of program material used today. Next week, from Hollywood, a satiric fantasy written by and starring Stan Freberg about the entertainment competition in a desert spa roughly paralleling Las Vegas.
I'd like to remind you that all...
From Hollywood, the CBS Radio Workshop. Where are the weak of will, the strong of arm, the clown, the boozer, the fighter? All are sleeping on the hill. Where are the tender heart, the simple soul, the loud, the proud, the happy one? All are sleeping on the hill. The CBS Radio Workshop, dedicated to man's imagination, the theater of the mind, presents Epitaphs, with the words from Edgar Lee Masters' Spoon River Anthology, the music of Wolfgang Frankel, and your narrator, William Conrad. Mr. Conrad. Thank you. More than 40 years ago, Edgar Lee Masters' Spoon River Anthology was first published. Although this group of subjective epitaphs from an Illinois graveyard is scarcely remembered today, it profoundly affected a generation of American writers, opening their minds to the vast dimensions of the character of our land and its people. In the years that followed the publication of Spoon River, while we were becoming acquainted with giant after giant, Sinclair Lewis, Ernest Hemingway, Sherwood Anderson, Carl Sandburg, the poetry of the quiet, bespectacled law partner of Clarence Darrow has all but been forgotten. We feel that this should not be. And so to a new generation, we beg leave to offer a few of the townspeople of Spoon River, as Edgar Lee Masters saw them.
They speak from the burial ground on the hill above the village. What they say is often at variance with the words graven upon their tombstones, and at variance, too, with their fellow townsmen's opinions of them. For even in the stillness of death, they are disturbingly human. None so good nor so bad as he may have seemed while yet alive. There was Robert Fulton Tanner, who ran the village hardware store. Looking back, he thought he had developed at last a concept of life.
If a man could bite the giant hand that catches and destroys him, as I was bitten by a rat while demonstrating my patent trap in my hardware store that day, but a man can never avenge himself on the monstrous ogre life. You enter the room, that's being born, and then you must live, work out your soul. Aha, the bait that you crave is in view. A woman with money you want to marry, prestige, place, or power in the world. But there's work to do and things to conquer. Oh, yes, the wires that screen the bait. At last you get in, but you hear a step. The ogre life comes into the room. He was waiting and heard the clang of the spring. To watch you nibble the wondrous cheese and stare with his burning eyes at you and scowl and laugh and mock and curse you, rubbing up and down in the trap, until your misery bores him.
What God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. How often had the Reverend Lemuel Wiley enjoined these words, and those others, the corollary, till death do you part. For Mrs. Charles Bliss heard them once, and lived and died, regretting having heard.
Reverend Wiley advised me not to divorce him for the sake of the children, and Judge Summers advised him the same. So we stuck it out to the end of the path. But two of the children thought he was right, and two of the children thought I was right. And the two who sided with him blamed me, and the two who sided with me blamed him. And they grieved for the one they sided with. And all were torn with the guilt of judging and tortured in soul because they could not admire equally him and me. Now every gardener knows that plants grown in cellars or under stones are twisted and yellow and weak. And no mother would let her baby suck diseased milk from her breast. Yet preachers and judges advise the raising of souls where there is no sunlight, but only twilight. No warmth, but only dampness and cold. Preachers and judges.
I preached 4,000 sermons. I conducted 40 revivals and baptized many converts. Yet no deed of mine shines brighter in the memory of the world, and none is treasured more by me. Look how I saved the Blisses from divorce and kept the children free from that disgrace to grow up into moral men and women, happy themselves, a credit to the village.
The population of the burying ground on the hill is far greater than the village itself, for most of those who passed through the village now rest here. Those who had known the men of the Revolution, those who had marched off to Mexico in 46, and to Vicksburg and Gettysburg and Petersburg sometime later, and those who sent lovers and sons to the war between the states. Here are three such: Nolt Hoheimer, Ann Rutledge, and Hannah Armstrong.
I was the first fruits of the Battle of Missionary Ridge. When I felt the bullet enter my heart, I wished I'd stayed at home and gone to jail for stealing the hogs of Curl Trenery. instead of running away and joining the army. Rather 1,000 times the county jail than to lie under this marble figure with wings and this granite pedestal bearing the words Pro Patria. What do they mean, anyway?
Out of me, unworthy and unknown, the vibrations of deathless music, with malice toward none, with charity for all. Out of me, the forgiveness of millions toward millions, and the beneficent face of a nation shining with justice and truth. I am Anne Rutledge, who sleep beneath these weeds, beloved in life of Abraham Lincoln, wedded to him, not through union, but through separation. Bloom forever, O Republic, from the dust of my bosom.
I wrote him a letter asking him for old time's sake to discharge my sick boy from the army. But maybe he couldn't read it. Then I went to town and had James Garber, who wrote beautifully, write him a letter. But maybe that was lost in the mails. So I traveled all the way to Washington. I was more than an hour finding the White House. And when I found it, they turned me away, hiding their smiles. Then I thought, oh, well, he ain't the same as when I boarded him and he and my husband worked together and all of us called him Abe there in Menard. As a last attempt, I turned to a guard and said, please say it's old Aunt Hannah Armstrong from Illinois. Come to see him about her sick boy in the army. Well, just in a moment they let me in. And when he saw me, he broke in a laugh and dropped his business as president and wrote in his own hand Doug's discharge. Talking the while of the early days and telling stories.
The scars of prejudice and segregation go deep. A man and a boy who knew the racism of Spoon River still remember from the grave. Shaq Dye and Yi Bo.
The white men played all sorts of jokes on me. They took big fish off my hook and put little ones on while I was away getting a stringer, and made me believe I hadn't seen right the fish I'd caught. When Burr Robin's circus came to town, they got the ringmaster to let a tame leopard into the ring, and made me believe I was whipping a wild beast like Samson, when I, for an offer of $50, dragged him out to his cage. One time I entered my blacksmith shop and shook as I saw some horseshoes crawling across the floor as if alive. Walter Simmons had put a magnet under the barrel of water. Yet every one of you white men, was fooled about fish and about leopards, too. And you didn't know any more than the horseshoes did what moved you about Spoon River.
They got me into the Sunday school in Spoon River and tried to get me to drop Confucius for Jesus. I could have been no worse off if I had tried to get them to drop Jesus for Confucius. For without any warning, as if it were a prank, and sneaking up behind me, Harry Wiley, the minister's son, caved my ribs into my lungs with a blow of his fist. Now, I shall never sleep with my ancestors in Peking, and no children shall worship at my grave.
Ma'am, Frank Crummett is here with me to say a word about Roy Tan cigars. Frank Crummett.
I'm really a fan for Roy Tan, and the reason is Roy Tan has more long filler Havana tobacco, and yet it's a 5-cent cigar. Man to man, smoke Roy Tan.
It is written, the sins of the fathers shall be visited upon the children, even unto the third generation. Willard Fluke and his daughter learned this bitter truth, one with hopelessness, the other with tranquil acceptance.
My wife lost her health and dwindled until she weighed scarce 90 pounds. Then that woman whom the men styled Cleopatra came along, and we married ones all broke our vows, myself among the rest. Years passed, and one by one, death claimed them all in some hideous form. And I was borne along by dreams of God's particular grace for me, and I began to write reams on reams of the second coming of Christ. Then Christ came to me and said, "Go into the church and stand before the congregation and confess your sin." But just as I stood up and began to speak, I saw my little girl who was sitting in the front seat. My little girl who was born blind. After that, all is blackness.
Here lies the body of Lois Spears, born Lois Fluke, daughter of Willard Fluke, wife of Cyrus Spears, mother of Myrtle and Virgil Spears, children with clear eyes and sound limbs. I was born blind. I was the happiest of women, as wife, mother, and housekeeper, caring for my loved ones and making my home a place of order and bounteous hospitality. For I went about the rooms and about the garden with an instinct as sure as sight, as though there were eyes in my fingertips. Glory to God in the highest.
What would you say of Circe Foote, a young man with a problem? Who is to judge this victim of a senile aunt? Who is to know how he will be judged on that final day?
I wanted to go away to college, but rich Aunt Persis wouldn't help me. So I made gardens and raked the lawns and bought John Alden's books with my earnings and toiled for the very means of life. I wanted to marry Delia Prickett, but how could I do it with what I earned? And there was Aunt Persis, more than 70, who sat in a wheelchair, half alive, with her throat so paralyzed when she swallowed the soup ran out of her mouth like a duck. A gourmand yet. Investing her income in mortgages, fretting all the time about her notes and rents and papers. That day I was sawing wood for her and reading Proudhon in between. I went in the house for a drink of water, and there she sat, asleep in her chair, and Proudhon lying on the table, and a bottle of chloroform on the book she used sometimes for an aching tooth. I poured the chloroform on a handkerchief, and I held it to her nose till she died. Oh, Delia. Delia, you and Proudhon steadied my hand. And the coroner said she died of heart failure. I married Delia and got the money. A joke on you, Spoon River?
Others are not so shrewd or so fortunate in hiding their dilemma. And in a small town, one person's problem can become the cross of another and another. And so it was with Minerva Jones and Doc Myers.
I'm Minerva, the village poetess. hooted at, jeered at by the yahoos of the street for my heavy body, cockeye, and rolling walk. And all the more when Butch Weldy captured me after a brutal hunt. He left me to my fate with Dr. Myers, and I sank into death, growing numb from the feet up like one stepping deeper and deeper into a stream of ice. Will someone go to the village newspaper and gather into a book the verses I wrote? I thirsted so for love. I hungered so for life.
No other man, unless it was Doc Hill, did more for people in this town than I. And all the weak, the halt, the improvident, and those who could not pay flocked to me. I was good-hearted, easy Dr. Myers. I was healthy, happy, in comfortable fortune, blessed with a congenial mate. My children raised, all wedded, doing well in the world. And then one night, Minerva, the poetess, came to me in her trouble, crying. I tried to help her out. She died. They indicted me. The newspapers disgraced me. My wife perished of a broken heart, and pneumonia finished me.
One man digs his grave with his teeth, 'tis said. Another, facing problems that have broken his heart, lies down quietly and dies. Then there is yet another kind, the living dead. Nancy Knapp was one of these.
Well, don't you see, this was the way of it. We bought the farm with what he inherited, and his brothers and sisters accused him of poisoning his father's mind against the rest of them. And we never had any peace with our treasure. The moraine took the cattle and the crops failed, and lightning struck the granary, so we mortgaged the farm to keep going. And he grew silent and was worried all the time. Then some of the neighbors refused to speak to us and took sides with his brothers and sisters, and I had no place to turn. As one may say to himself at an earlier time in life, no matter, so-and-so is my friend, or I can shake this off with a little trip to Decatur. Then the dreadfulest smells infested the rooms, so I set fire to the beds, and the old witch house went up in a roar of flames as I danced in the yard with waving arms, while he wept like a freezing steer.
Thank God not all of us are mean and wretched and weak. Thank God for the hope he gives all of us when he puts people like Lucinda Matlock upon this earth.
I went to the dances at Chandlerville and played snap out at Winchester. One time we changed partners, driving home in the moonlight of middle June. And then I found Davis. We were married and lived together for 70 years, enjoying, working, raising the 12 children, 8 of whom we lost ere I had reached the age of 60. I spun, I wove, I kept the house, I nursed the sick, and made the garden, and for holiday rambled over the fields where sang the larks, and by Spoon River gathering many a shell, many a flower, and medicinal weed, shouting to the wooded hills, singing to the green valleys. At 96, I had lived enough. That is all, and passed to a sweet repose. What is this I hear of sorrow and weariness, anger, discontent, and drooping hopes? Degenerate sons and daughters, life is too strong for you. It takes life to love life.
Where are they now? All are sleeping on the hill.
You have just heard the CBS Radio Workshop's production of Epitaphs, excerpted from the Spoon River anthology of Edgar Lee Masters, with original music composed and conducted by Wolfgang Frankel. Epitaphs was directed by William Conrad, whose voice was also heard as narrator. The workshop is produced in Hollywood by William N. Robeson. The citizens of Spoon River were recreated by
Lillian Bayette,
Virginia Christine, Virginia Gregg, Sammy Hill, Vivi Janis, Jeanette Nolan,
Lorraine Tuttle,
Parley Bear, Dick Crenna,
John Daner,
Roy Glenn,
John McIntyre,
Howard McNear,
and John Stevenson.
Next week, from New York, the CBS Workshop will present The Seven Hills, a personality sketch of one of the world's most unique and ancient cities, Eternal Rome. This is the CBS Radio...
Oh, sure. I heard that one when I was a real little kid.
Here, Shiv, old boy, you come and look after this stew and let me borrow that lip organ for a minute. I'll give you a really spirited old army tune.
Right, sir.
This one practically took the world, as our armies haven't been doing for some time now, I'm afraid.
We know that. Oh, everybody do. I also. From my papushka. You fight in First War also. Tit! Hop! There goes that stew. First stop meal I might have had in 3 days. Nичего! He's army, товарищ. Always the same.
The mayor of Newark to see the general. Sergeant of squad next to headquarters. Cut!
Guess he means you, Johnny.
Sergeant Johnson, 1st Squad, 1st Platoon, 2070 Infantry reporting, sir.
Report to General Clarkson that Mayor Collins is calling with technical experts.
Yes, sir.
All others, as you work.
Good. I play music for Mayor to go to terrible fate. What fate? We talk with Big General. What color eyes Mayor have? How I know? Never mind. Maybe dark.
Look here, Mr. Mayor. We know you have your problems, but we have worse ones. We have reliable information that an enemy force will attempt a landing somewhere around Cape May within 2 or 3 days. We've got to stop that.
Whose force, may I ask, General Clarkson?
How am I supposed to know by all the knobby knees in New Jersey? Our intelligence says it's probably General Wolfe with his Germans.
Germans, General?
Or whatever he's got now. But even if they're outer Tibetans, I can tell you we're in for a rough time. And so will you and your people be, Mr. Mayor, if we can't stop them from landing.
I'm sorry, General, but I still don't see how we are involved. We are a community of civilians.
Well, let me tell you, Mr. Civilian, you have the good fortune to be the head of one of the few cities in the world that has at least some serviceable walls left. Now, I know Wolf
picked him up when we got pushed back through Washington State by those Mohammedans of General Abdel Ali.
Me, I joined up with these chaps in Canada after my own brigade was wiped out. Where else would a man go these days?
Me, I believe in freedom.
And me, I reckon I just like fighting.
I have to repeat my question, young man. Is this supposed to be an American army?
Why, sure it is, sir. Our commanding officer is General Clarkson in that tent over there.
But, Sergeant...
Never mind, William. The government undoubtedly has its reasons.
Government? There is no government that I've heard from, at least. Not even about taxes.
Don't fuss now, William. Sergeant.
Yes, ma'am?
Do you happen to be free from duty tonight?
As far as I know, ma'am. Unless we get orders to move out.
Well, our apartment is below street level, and so we still have a fairly decent place to live in. That last rocket did shake the plaster off the ceiling. But it's warm and quite comfortable, and we have a little store of tea left over.
Tea? As a matter of fact, Mother, I even think there are a few bottles of beer. Home brew, of course.
Beer?
Cerveza?
What?
Beer, you dope people! Zusammen, shut you crazy!
Stow it, Ruski. Can't you stop playing that tinkle box even while you're breaking your legs in this rubble?
Hey, you don't like music when we go to party?
Yeah, but we're not going to Kentucky. You could be carrying a squirt gun over that shoulder.
I got 2 shoulders, Chief. One for gun, one for balalaika.
Kentucky, where it is?
Never mind, Carver. They ain't had a war there in 100 years.
Somebody sure beat up this town, though.
You say that after we go through Chicago, Detroit, Toledo? Oh, look the same.
Yeah, I guess you're right, Sen. Hold it, guys. I think this is the place. Oh. Why, miss, we were looking for Mr. and Mrs. Taylor. We were invited.
You're expected, too. Please come in.
Oh, thank you, miss. We didn't know.
Oh, look at our fellow. Ravel has found himself a little mini guy.
Oh, come on. Shut up with that.
I've fought him before. And if Wolf makes a landing here in New Jersey, you not only will have none of your walls left, but no people either. Mr. Mayor, we know that you've got gasoline stored underground somewhere around here, and we need gas.
You'll make it sound grim, General.
It will be grim, believe me.
Perhaps so, but what do you want me to do about it?
Lord knows we've got few enough tanks left, but even those we have are useless without gas. And if we can't get gas for our trucks to bring up the supplies that we have left, or those we can squeeze out of communities like yours, Mr. Mayor, why, man, we'd be just plain helpless.
Let me ask you one question, General.
Sure, fire away.
Whom are you fighting and why?
Whom? Why, anybody who's fighting us, of course. Anybody. Why? Well, I suppose I have to admit I don't really know too much about that part of it myself. But because I'm a soldier, I suppose. Because my government ordered me to.
But we have hardly any government left, General. When were you last in touch with anything one could call the government of the United States of America?
Well...
Exactly, General. But I tell you what I'll do. I'll turn one of our gas reservoirs over to you and let you do with it whatever you want. And I'll throw in a bonus on one condition.
That's too much, sir. Who are you to make conditions to the commanding officer of an army of your own government?
About the government, I wouldn't know, General. I haven't heard anything from them for a pretty long time. Concerning your army, I'm not so sure whether it should be considered an army of the United States or just General Clarkson's army.
No.
There have been I don't know how many dozens of armies like yours wandering around the world these last few years, clawing at each other and pushing each other back and forth across the earth.
Yeah. All right. What's your condition?
That you get your troops out tomorrow morning.
Well, that one I can accept. We have an appointment around Cape May anyway, if we can get your gasoline, that is.
Well, don't let the difference in our points of view mislead you, General. We naturally wish you the best of luck.
Thanks. You mentioned a bonus.
Yes, it's something your intelligence apparently missed. Just before this whole mess started, the government enlarged a few of the natural caves in the foothills west of here and stored some airplanes there. There are about 5 or 6 left.
Airplanes?
I don't know how modern you'd consider them.
Modern? Modern? Man, what does that matter when there hasn't been a factory on the face of the earth producing anything at all for years? I don't even know if I'd still recognize an airplane anymore.
Well, they're yours, together with the gas, if your army leaves in the morning.
Mr. Mayor, you got a deal. Now we'll at least have a chance against that wolf.
Hold it a minute, soldier. There's a couple of folks here.
Civilians. Oh, they're wearing decent clothes, too.
What can I do for you, sir? And ma'am?
Mr. and Mrs. William Harrison Taylor, young man.
Sir?
I ain't no sir, ma'am. Just a sergeant.
Well, sergeant, then.
Sergeants run army, lady. Never mind, sir. Except general, maybe.
All right, shut up, you two. Yes, ma'am?
Well, you'll have to forgive an old lady's curiosity, but it's been so long since we've heard anything about what is going on. We would have liked to have brought something for you and your men.
Oh, there wouldn't have been any call for that, ma'am. The Army still takes pretty good care of us.
He means we take good care.
Don't mind them, ma'am. They're just road happy. Men get a little silly after marching a long time.
You mean marching too long, Sergeant?
I wouldn't know, sir. We go where we have to go.
Yeah, but it's pretty far sometimes, Johnny.
You talk. You come only from Cuba. Me, I come all the way from Korea.
Stow it, Sen. There's 8,000 miles of water between Melbourne and even the west coast of this blooming continent.
Madam, permit a man to speak among children. Me, I come from Omsk. From Omsk? That is in Siberia. It is half around the world.
Say, Sergeant, what kind of an army is this anyway? I thought it was American.
Oh, it is that, sir. General Clarkson's army.
But all those foreigners...
Well, sir, in a war like this, you can't take too much account of nationalities. Now, Ivan, the Ruski here, we picked him up in Alaska after that big fight we had up there. His own outfit was just about wiped out. Well, he didn't have no place to go, so he joined up with us. And Sen here, he says he's a Korean. Seems he came over with that army that invaded California under General Yamento a couple of years ago. But he got lost in the hills. He had no way to get home. So he kept wandering around, and we...
Pick him up, you critters. Pick him up. Horses pulling tanks and trucks.
Johnny, you have a cigarette for me?
One of those Canadians is all.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Me too, Johnny.
Sure.
What this town we come to, Sargento?
I don't know for sure, Domingo. Newark, New Jersey, if I remember my geography.
Newark, New Jersey.
I never hear of such a place.
Well, it's just south of where New York used to be. Pretty big town. Or used to be.
The CBS Radio Workshop, dedicated to man's imagination, the theater of the mind. Today, The Long Way Home, a glimpse of a future we trust will never happen. A story of the fate of men to whom it is given to do what they have to do, with or without understanding, but with patience, goodwill, and a sense of comradeship.
Hi, Ruski. You know, that was a German song when I was fighting in North Africa 30 years ago.
Every army take it over. Like every army take up song in every war. Let me play you other one from First World War. I think we learned this from Avstrici, but many soldiers still sing it in Spanish War. I know. My father was airplane mechanic there.
Say, I hear that. My old man, he served in the United States Army in 1917. He was Cubano like me, of course. But he want to fight Alemans.
Germanskis, everybody want to fight them. Let me play you a song from Second Big War. This one is Russian. I think you all know.